today, and now you feel fat today also. You're welcome. And now there's a podcast.
Welcome to I Feel Fat today. Thank you so much for joining. I have a long episode for you. It was so great. We just got done recording. I'm going to get it edited and get it posted. And I'm sorry that this is the second week in a row where we don't have a video intro, but I got to get this cranked out so that we can, so that you can listen to this episode. It's a longer one, so I'm going to keep this brief. Listen, guys, you know the drill. I ask the same things of you every week. If you haven't already, please subscribe on YouTube. It really makes all the difference. Follow us on Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review. Follow us on social media at I Feel Fat Today. And you can follow me on Instagram as well. Hello, this is Kelly. You know what to do. I mean, I don't gotta tell you to do this. We're gonna get into it with our guest. It's a long one, so I'm gonna bring him right in. Please welcome my guest this week, the very interesting Joe Camerota.
Hello.
Can you quickly just tell the story again of your harrowing trip over here?
Yeah, so I've been filling out this written interview all day, and I was in the zone, and so shame on me. I knew I was leaving where I was going to be like a few minutes late, but then a few minutes turned into like 10, 15 minutes late, and then I'm rushing here on the Q train, right? And I get to the 14th Street station, and everyone's there. New York right now will hold up trains to just make rush hour in the city so much worse.
Yeah.
It was. The train was moving so slow, and then I noticed there was so many people to get on the queue at 14th Street, and I was on the queue coming from Brooklyn, and they just kept on stopping the queue all along the way.
Yeah.
And sure enough, by the time the queue got to 14th Street, there was like 10,000 people waiting for the queue. But I get to 14th Street, and everyone exits, and everyone's rushing to get to the L. And I run down the stairs to the L, and the L is packed. I guess people have been waiting. It's already there, and all the doors are open. But the guy literally can't close the doors because people are still getting in.
Yep.
And people are running from door, because when you get down the steps, you're right there in like the middle. And people are running down to all the different doors to find any room to get in. And I'm one of those people running down. And as I'm running, just my phone was loose in the pocket of my jacket here, and it slipped out and slid in between in between the train and the track, and it slid onto the track, down onto the track. And then I'm like, okay, am I about to hear my phone explode? That's what I thought, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but I'm like, oh no, it's probably not going to run over it because it's on the track. You know, the train's on the track, right? So I'm like, but still, is it going to get caught into something? You know, am I going to hear it being taken off into Williamsburg? And then what happened is the train left, and I can see my phone there. And there's this other guy, and he saw it happen, and there's another train coming, and because of course there is, like we just talked about, of course there's just another train right afterwards instead of trains separate enough to create not chaos. So anyway, I see the phone there, and I'm like, okay, I guess I'll wait for this other train because I'm not going to jump into the tracks when there's a train coming. That's too alarming for everyone. And so this other train comes, which no one on this train, by the way, of course, you know what I mean? Like literally 0 people on this train. So like it's just mad, the efficiency of what's, and you don't know. I don't know if someone went crazy earlier, and that's why there's all these weird backups. I have no idea, right? The trouble is you can't audit such a system because anyone can just make up anything, you know, as to why. And then it's not even worth it. You're just like, keep on running the trains. But anyway, so there's no one on that train. That train leaves, and I prep myself mentally. I'm like, as soon as this train leaves, Joe, you're going to just jump onto the, like don't even think. Just jump onto the tracks and jump back up. But in my mind, as I told you before, I'm like, oh, this is highly illegal. Like if I'm caught on camera right now, police will come out and they will just arrest me,
Right.
and like bring me to jail, and I might get charged with a felony for what's your felony? Jumping onto the track. If anyone heard that, they go, yeah, that's a felony, man. I'm pretty sure jumping onto the train tracks in New York City for any reason is a felony. If you drop something, you're supposed to just go get a station person, who will then tell you to fuck off, probably. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's no way. There's no way they're just gonna go, hey man, go to the Google store and get yourself a new phone because. Yeah.
I mean, you jumped down and you got it.
Yeah.
Now, did it cross your mind at all that you might have an issue
getting
right back up onto the platform?
It did, oddly enough. I'm like, I work out, so I'm like, I think I can just get back up.
It's like a really big box jump.
Yeah. It was, I'm not going to lie. It wasn't, no, it was actually surprisingly easier than I thought. I will say that.
Okay.
It was actually surprisingly easier than I thought. Maybe I'm tall enough. I have no idea.
Right.
How
I also
that happened. I think I'm just tall enough, if that makes sense.
And I also
I'm not
think
too tall. I'm like 5'11" and a half, you know what I mean? But I guess that's tall enough to where it was like here to then where I could like push myself
Springboard.
up onto my chest here and then kind of roll on.
I always think that adrenaline probably
There's
is
that
playing
too,
a factor.
right? Yeah, 100%.
Like that,
100%,
like flip a car off a kid energy.
Totally. That like I just
like
need
it's
to
a life or death situation. You put yourself
in so many different aspects.
Danger.
Am I going to get run over by a train or arrested? Like there's definitely there's
and when
enemies
the
coming from every corner.
When the solution laid in, I'm gonna have to drop some money on a new phone at the Google store.
Yes,
but it was worth potentially your life or your freedom.
Yeah. It truly was.
When you messaged me that happened, I thought, wow, he really doesn't want to come do the podcast.
Yeah, no, I was just I know. Well, at that point I had my phone back, so at that point, in my mind, I was just gonna have to ghost you. I was like,
it would have been a problem because
I would have had to go to. Well, no, I would have just gone home and messaged you on Instagram.
Yeah, you just would have gone home, and I would have been sitting here like very confused, because I already had like a weird time getting here. I thought I was gonna be late. I sent you all these frantic messages on my own end, and so I probably just would have thought that it had something to do with that. But yeah, crazy. And my doorbell is broken, so you wouldn't even have been able to buzz me.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah.
But we made it happen. We're here now.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing I thought about. I'm like, I don't even know the address offhand.
Yeah.
I just literally like on the Google invite just pressed it and went straight to Google Maps, and the rest is history in that way. So,
well, thank you. I'm glad that glad to see that for the user it works like that, because that's why I made the calendar. Okay.
Yeah, it works.
Fantastic. Well, you're here now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Also, you can take your jacket off. You look very comfortable.
I'm very comfortable right now. But I'll probably in a
free,
little bit I'll take it off.
I try to undress all of my guests.
Okay.
So you have a film in Sundance, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, so I produced a movie called Didn't Die. It's directed by Mir Menon. It's a zombie movie. I filmed it 2 years ago in upstate New York. I act in a scene in the movie, which I love too. And it's premiering at Sundance. It got into Sundance. It's a feature at Sundance. It's in the midnight category because it's a zombie movie. They traditionally are in what's called the midnight category there. So it's like midnight movies, what are called genre movies, which are like sci-fi, zombie movies, horror movies, anything like that.
Yeah.
And so like and it's amazing. There's only 7 movies in the category. One of them stars James Franco, one of them stars John Malkovich, and then our movie. And our movie is a much lower budget movie than a lot of the other movies in the same exact category as us. And so it's kind of an amazing story in that way, that we're the people who made it without any of the Hollywood frills.
Yeah,
but
like
now
a
we
true
are Hollywood.
Independent film.
Yeah, and it stars George Basil, who's the second lead on HBO's Crashing, as well as Kieran Deal, who was on one season of a TBS show. So it doesn't star, it's a Screen Actors Guild movie, but it's not James Franco.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not that. But now we are that because we're there.
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
so awesome.
like the craziest thing. So now we are the thing.
Were you involved in the project at its inception, or were you brought in?
I was brought in after the script was written, so I got the script, and then it's kind of funny. I was writing about all this today. The script got written, and then the script got given to me, and we did a pre-production meeting, which is you effectively you talk about all the stuff that you would need for the movie in the sense of how many assistant camera people, how many gaffers, how many what the food situation is
Yeah,
going to be
like all
like
this shit you have to think about.
all the things you have to think about. And then you take the script and you circle all the nouns. And when you circle all the nouns, so you have all the others behind the scenes stuff that you just kind of know, because I've made movies before, and so I just know that. And then you circle all the nouns, and then you discuss the nouns with the director. And the director is like, so the nouns are, person, place, or thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have like one of the locations would be one of the nouns you discuss. So a lot of times as a producer, the director has all the lead actors and actresses, but these ancillary actors and actresses, and especially the extras, that's all up to the producers. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you have to ask the director. Well, it's up to the producers to get those options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you have to ask a lot of questions of the directors for the people, places, and things. Also, what happens a lot is you get this script, right? And then for the places especially, the director would write a scene. Let's say the director writes a scene, and in this, it's kind of an interesting thing because it kept on moving in our case. The director wrote something that took place at a pharmacy. And then at one point we were going to film it instead in a abandoned school classroom that we found, just because we found that and we couldn't find a pharmacy. You know what I mean?
It's a lot easier to film in an abandoned school than a pharmacy.
What it was is they were getting first aid equipment at a pharmacy. You know what I mean? And so my job was to find a pharmacy, but I couldn't find a pharmacy. But what I could find was an abandoned school.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
they would have
first aid stuff at abandoned school. The director's like, yeah, they would. So that's our option. That's our go-to option.
Nice.
And then it ended up getting worked out even more in that particular case, where it ended up then being shifted to a computer store, which we were going to turn into a pharmacy. But then we wanted to shoot more at this one location that we loved, so we moved it to just this other sort of storage unit on this one property that we already had to shoot this other thing. So it's all these sort of weird compromises along the way. But as a producer, you circle all the nouns and you ask the director, what are the specs for these nouns? And then you give the director a bunch of options based on those specs.
Yeah.
And then the director picks. And so in a weird way, the reason I like it is because here's the thing, all the jobs are creative jobs, but I think being a producer is it's a fun creative job in my mind, because you're creating the options for the world.
Yeah.
And that's like the thing where you're actually on the ground, taking a story and going, okay, I know what the director wants, but based on the options, how can I create options for the director to effectively tell the story?
Yeah.
And the creative decisions behind that, in my mind, are just a lot of fun, because you're actually there at the very, very, very beginning, turning all the keys. And in this case, and what usually happens is when you start turning the keys, you have like a soft commitment from a director. The director is like, hey, start getting prices, start finding options, and if you get a couple of deals, then we'll move forward. Right? That's always the thing. But if it's too expensive, we're not going to do it.
We can't do it. There's no budget.
And what happened was we got a lot of really, really, really good deals that we found, and it made it worth it. Most notably, there's this guy who's my hero, because when you film a zombie movie, you have to have a town that you shut down, right? This is a true story. We have to have a town that you shut down. And at the Orange County, New York Film Office, this woman named Nora Martinez, she's awesome. She was the woman I was working with at the Orange County, New York Film Office. And she was telling me all these, tips. Hey, this town you need a permanent. This town you don't need a permanent, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? All the just different, here are different options of places that people have filmed in the past. Here are the contacts for that. Here's photos of that already. here are towns that are friendly to filming. Here are towns that are not as friendly to filming. Blah blah blah. And there's this one town called the Village of Goshen, New York, and it's gorgeous. It's like the most gorgeous place in the world. It's they have like the Harness Racing Hall of Fame museum there, like that. But anyway, it's a gorgeous village in upper state New York, in Orange County, New York. And it's the Village of Goshen, New York. And I went there, and they told me, hey, everyone wants to film in the Village of Goshen, but nobody gets permission to, so don't think you're going to.
Right.
They said no to City on a Hill, which was a Kevin Bacon show.
Right,
what I mean?
right.
So they said no to Kevin Bacon. They're not going to say yes to you. I'm like, okay. So I'm just going to places to take photos, right, to give to the director to see, hey, what do you want me to look into? You know what I mean? I'm literally at that point. And I go to this place, the Village of Goshen, New York, and I take photos. This is a true story. And it's a zombie movie, like I said. So I take photos, and I'm taking photos, and I'm standing in front of the police station in the center of town taking photos. And this cop comes out and goes, hey, he goes, what are you doing here? I go, I'm a producer. I'm just taking photos to give to a director of the center square here in town to see if the director might possibly want to inquire about the price or the permission of filming in this town. And the guy goes, well, you have to talk to the chief. Yeah, I talked to the chief. The chief is the one in charge of all that. I'm like, okay. And so I start taking photos, and he's like, do you want to talk to the chief? And I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll take photos, and I'll just give it to Mira, our director. So he goes, okay. So he leaves. And I keep on taking photos, and all of a sudden this guy comes out, this older guy. And not too older, you know what I mean? But definitely, he's definitely a veteran officer.
Yeah.
And he comes out, and he comes over, and he goes, hey, he goes, what are you doing here? And I see on his shirt it says chief, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, this
Talking to
is
the
the chief.
chief.
I go, hey, I want to film a movie, or I'm producing a movie, and I don't know if we necessarily want to film in this town, but I'm just taking photos to give to the director. And he goes, okay. He goes, well, better come inside my office and tell me about your movie, and let's get this all started and blah 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 and everything. And he's kind of rolling his eyes. And we go inside his office, and he starts asking me about the project. And I go, well, I went to USC and I studied filmmaking there with all these other people, and we're all coming together to make this movie. And he's writing all down, and he's writing my name down, my phone number, just all my information and stuff. And I start to explain how we're a group of people coming together from USC. And I go, and he's writing, and I go, it's directed by Mira Menon, and she's a television director, and she's directed episodes, and I say, and the movie that we're making is a zombie movie, and I see his pen stop. And I go, and Mira has directed episodes of The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. And he looks up. I swear to God, he looks up, and he looks me right in the eyes, and he goes, do you have time to see the whole town? I go, what? He goes, do you have time to see the whole town? I go, okay. He goes, yeah. He goes, I can show you the whole town. Okay. So he rushes me out to his SUV, puts me in the passenger seat, so I got front passenger seat. And he goes, do you have time to meet the mayor? What? He goes, yeah. He goes, you got to get permission from the mayor if you want to film in town. So do you have time to meet the mayor? I'm like, yeah, sure, I guess.
I'll meet the mayor.
So
Can
he
I
takes
get a
me to go
key
see
to the city?
Yeah, he takes me to go see the mayor, right? And he rushes me into this room. We bother the mayor. He's in some meeting. And he's like, Mayor, this is Joe. He's going to film a zombie movie in our town. I'm like, okay. And the mayor's like, okay, chief, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And then he starts driving me around, telling me, I know the owner of that place. I can get that place for free. I know the owner of that place. I can get that place for free. Like, any of these streets can be shut down for free, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. He's like, you have to pay the state for this thing, but the town fees will be free.
Amazing.
All that, right? And it comes out that apparently he's been on the police force for 41 years. He's been chief of police for, I think it was 27 years at that point.
Oh, yeah. So that's his town.
And he, for 27 years at that point. And turns out, so his favorite genre is zombie movies, and his life goal, because a lot of movies come to ask to shoot in Goshen, and he has to give approval, his life goal was for a zombie movie to film in Goshen, New York. Swear to God.
That's beautiful.
And he just gives us all this stuff for free, and we put him in the movie as
Oh,
a zombie,
that's awesome.
as the opening zombie and stuff.
Yes.
And so yeah, it was crazy. It was like literally like this weird thing where I was like just trading dreams with this guy.
That's
it was very
so
surreal.
awesome.
It was so surreal. It was so very surreal. So I was just like trading dreams with this guy, and it was so surreal in that way. And so then we filmed the movie there, and we all signed. He wore a police uniform as the first zombie in the movie. I mean, which is kind of like, I know like people will be like, oh, they're trying to make social commentary with the first zombie being a cop, and it's like, no, it's just the guy who literally made the movie possible in that way. But movies are interesting like that because they're very serendipitous in that way, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
The thing that actually begins to then shape the movie and is reflective of everything that's going on in the world just kind of happened because that was what was available.
Yeah.
But the universe just kind of puts together art in that way. You know what I mean?
So
art is
awesome.
kind of just what happens in that way and stuff. So Sky Chief Watt, awesome dude, gave us the key Soul Town. Greatest guy, salt of the earth, and then he retired right away. It was literally his life dream. He's already retired and everything like that.
Wow.
So yeah, it's wild. Yeah,
you really helped him realize a dream. While you were realizing a dream.
Right. Yeah.
So cool.
It was this very surreal thing. It's a very, very,
nice.
very surreal. So yeah.
Very cool. So, that's cool. What's the name of the movie?
Didn't Die.
I'm so excited to check it out, Joe, and I love horror movies, so we'll definitely watch it when we can, when it's out and about where we can get it. That's awesome. Cool. So you went to film school. That's awesome. Yep. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a place called Enfield, Connecticut. I don't like it there. If it burns to the ground, I'd be fine with that. So that's, kind of how I feel towards that place.
Why do you hate it so much?
I don't know. I just got bullied a lot when I was a kid by other kids and stuff. So there's that.
Why were you bullied?
I had boobs.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh.
No. When I had a gynecomastia surgery when I was, which is male breast reduction surgery, when I was 23.
Oh my God,
20.
were you overweight?
What's weird? I became more overweight when I grew boobs. So it was definitely genetic that I grew boobs, right? Because I lost a ton of weight, but I still couldn't get rid of the boobs, and that was the whole thing.
Figure.
And so I ended up having male breast reductions, and because I at one point I almost became like anorexic and stuff, like trying to get rid of the boobs. You know what I mean? And I just couldn't, you know what I mean? And it was just actual breast tissue. So it was just like a genetic thing, you know what I mean? That happens and stuff. So
that does happen.
And so
I wish I had that.
And so I had I had male breast reductions when I was gynecomastia surgery, which I think is funny because it's like kind of a unique thing that I always think about. And so I got bullied a lot for that. And then I was on this basketball team where my uncle was the coach, and he would just let kids bully me. It was actually a sad thing. It was like I hate him. He's the villain in the story of my life. One of the villains in the story of my life. It was just my uncle he wanted to be this basketball coach really badly. So he would just let kids literally molest me in front of him. And he would just laugh along with these kids.
Doing his bidding.
Yeah, literally. Well, he was doing their bidding, if that makes sense. He wanted to be one of the cool kids. You know what I mean?
Oh, what a
so,
loser.
So they were abusing me, and he just wanted to be the cool coach that the kids liked. So, and I was the sacrificial lamb for his ego.
His own blood.
Yeah, isn't that weird, man?
So
and his son was on the team too. So he was just happy it wasn't his son that was getting abused and everything.
Was your cousin sorry about him?
Well, they were no. Well, they would together they would try to normalize it a lot. You know what I mean? And even when I would try to get away from it, they would really make these weird efforts to normalize it.
Yeah.
And it was a Catholic school basketball team, and it was all these public school kids that were on the team that were part of the CCD program, the Sunday school program.
Those criminals.
So I was a Catholic school kid, and they were a public school kid, and I had kids, and so it's just just such a bad combination. You know what I mean? It's
especially because was I'm assuming your Catholic school was small.
Yeah,
and the public school is really big.
Well, eventually, yes. But when basketball first started, it was in elementary school almost. So it was very small. The elementary school was small. But then, yes, they were right away almost in the second year of basketball. They were in these huge middle schools. Yeah, where I was still in the small.
Yeah, and that's it's kids who are equipped for two different things, and the public school kids have so much more street smart because they have to deal with so many more people. Like they have different classes with like different kids because it's just a big school. And Catholic school, I know I went to Catholic school too. You have the same classes with these same kids because it's like.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just they just met a dude who had tits. You know what I mean? Like in a
and
weird
like,
way because like let's put it this way: if I had gone to their school from day one, I'd always had kids in their school. It probably would have been way different. I probably would have been made fun of, but it wouldn't have been cruel because I would have been their friend from like kindergarten or something like that.
And you also may
The
have
way
been
that,
better
like-
equipped to deal with it.
Well, you know what it is? It's like I'm always, here's the thing. Whenever a person who I know busts my balls, I'm like, whatever, you know what I mean? I know this person, you know what I mean? But if I don't know you and you're
Very
doing
true.
that, it's just a bullying tactic, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think I learned that young, so I was just a stranger to them in that way.
Yes.
I was just a stranger
That's
with tits.
awful.
You know? Yeah, it was. It was terrible. It was really like a very traumatizing thing in my life.
So
you know
so
what I mean?
did those form during puberty?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like already a confusing time, and then to have that happen
Oh,
where you're
yeah.
so different
Yeah.
from other people. Do you have siblings?
I do. Yeah. So there's 5 kids total.
Wow. Okay, so where are you in the?
Second.
You're the second, so the second oldest. I'm curious, like, did your siblings make fun of you for that?
No, they never did.
Yeah.
They never did. I mean, I had like crazy. I came from this wealthy family. There's a lot. I talk about it, but I came from this really wealthy family. And I had an aunt who falsely accused me of molesting her son
Really?
in order to try and extort money from my grandmother.
No
yeah, so
way.
It was just like I was just like a punching bag. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And there was this whole DCF investigation and everything, and then DCF declared it unsubstantiated, and then my family just quickly swept it under the rug and told me to just like be like, you know, like she dropped the case against you.
So
like,
it's
you know what I mean?
another instance. To a greater degree, but another instance of family betraying you.
Well, so like then my family kicked her out, my aunt.
Yeah.
After she falsely accused me, my family kicked her out, and so then I was there, and I was already on the basketball team, so this abuse was already happening on the basketball team.
Right.
Then my aunt falsely accuses me. Then they kick her out, which I actually liked. I was like,
yeah, fuck her.
But I think they kicked her out just because she's a psychopath. You know what I mean? It had nothing to do with me.
Yeah,
it was just like they were just like this psychopath needs to
crazy
leave.
bitch,
You know what I mean?
money
So,
hungry.
yeah. So they were kicking her out for their own good in that way,
Right.
Because years later, when it came down to money, they let her back in when my grandma was dying. You know what I mean? So that's like the thing is it kind of went with the money. You know what I mean? When it came down to when my grandma died, she was gone until my grandma died. And when my grandma died, to save face in front of the whole town, they let her come to the funeral and walk in with them. So she was like gone. Does this make sense?
No,
so she was like gone
sense.
for forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My grandma dies, and then literally because the whole town, because it's a wealthy family and the whole town is showing up, and they don't want their dirt aired in front of the whole town. They chose to walk in with her.
Yeah.
And because of that, I chose to not walk in with them, and I chose to sit in the back. And what was crazy is I chose to sit in the back, separate from my family, because I'm like, I'm not going to sit next to that bitch. I'm not going to sit next to that bitch.
No.
And so what's crazy is I was forced to take the punishment that I was told was supposed to be given to her. Isn't that crazy? In order to save my own dignity. Isn't that insane?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Such a betrayal.
Yeah. I literally had to take the punishment that I was told was being given to her in order to keep my own dignity.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Wow, that is so much to put up with. How old were you at that time?
When my grandma died?
Yes.
I was, this was 30s. This was like 8 years ago. I'm 41 now.
Yeah, so you were early 30s.
Yeah,
so you're
like
an adult, and I mean, it was such a traumatizing thing to have happened to you.
Yeah.
So how old were you when you were falsely accused?
13.
13, right around the time of puberty. Right around the time when all of a sudden you have this rare
The boobs had already been there since like 11, so I was already getting picked on for that for years.
So it was just like another pile on, like
oh
my
yeah,
God.
no, I was literally just like the scapegoat punching bag, you know what I mean, for this like wealthy family, and they were like, "You're wealthy, fuck you," you know what I mean?
Totally.
They're like, you go to private schools and like everything is paid for you. You know what I mean? You want cash? Here's cash. Go fuck yourself. You know what I mean?
It's like,
and when you have tons of wealth, you know what I mean. I started drinking a ton in high school and stuff. And they would always give me money for booze and then yell at me for being drunk all the time. You know what I mean? I'm like, listen, I'm going through and I was going through major trauma, but I like needed to see a therapist. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And instead they're just like throwing money at me
love,
and being
not
like,
money.
and being like, go like travel the world and get drunk, but also don't do that. You're an asshole. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, man. I'm like, yeah, it was wild. It was a wild upbringing. Yeah.
That is wild. So when did you?
It was very much an Arrested Development, as they say.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That show, Arrested Development,
Yeah.
it's all about like people who come up through these
familial dysfunction,
weirdly hard situations that like the rest of the world is like, why would that be hard? And then you hear the stories and you're like, good Lord.
Yeah, that's
you know
terrible.
what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like your own family is like, oh, you're rich, you know, like whatever, we're giving you money. It's like people, you know, people's response to the LA wildfires are like, oh, rich people are losing their houses. Who cares? It's like, no, bro, this is awful.
And those people still lost all their things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, these people are still going through these same stages of grief that anyone else would go through. Those people, even though they're rich, they still had things in those fires. So they still lost all of their things. Go on.
Did you or would you ever write a movie about your upbringing like that?
I thought about it. I thought about making a documentary and then kind of starting there and then writing a movie from there. Yeah.
Do you talk to any of your family?
Some of them, you know what I mean? The ones I like, I talk to, and the ones I don't, I don't. You know what I mean? And that's kind of just it. And I don't go to like family parties or anything like that, so it's kind of easy in that way. You know
do you do holidays?
My brother always comes to see me every holiday because he also doesn't like a lot of my family.
Hell
and
yeah,
so,
brother in Christ.
So I get to see him every holiday because he also just would rather be here in New York City hanging out with me.
Yeah.
So ironically, that's been he's been betrayed in a lot of ways too by my family, and so he has a lot of grievances. And so he spends my holidays with me.
That's okay. That's good that you have somebody from especially a brother like that.
For sure.
So I'm curious, when you got what's the surgery called that you got?
Gynecomastia surgery.
When you got that, how did it feel afterward? Like, did you kind of feel like I can go on with my life? I can start my life? Like, what were your feelings around that?
That was actually very surreal. When I woke up, it was like a Black Mirror episode. I literally woke up a different person. Well, the first time I had 2 surgeries. The first time, the guy was kind of a grifter. It was in Connecticut. He's like, yeah, I can do gynecomastia surgery. He's like, but it turns out he just did liposuction on my tits, but it was all breast tissue. It wasn't, you know what I mean?
Right.
So it was like he just like shrunk them a little bit, and then they looked weirder. You know what I mean? So I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, so I got like a botched job the first time,
That's
but it wasn't
awful.
too badly botched. And then I actually went out to LA. And once again, this is where all the privilege comes in, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Even though you're being abused, they're like, hey, free tid job, right? You know what I mean? You're like, oh, Jesus Christ. So they sent me out to LA, right? And they pay for a tid job. They do. My family does. You know, they pay for $8,000 for a tid job in LA.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's the least they could do.
So I get right. So I get exactly. So I get an $8,000 tid job out there, and they actually take out the breast tissue and all that.
Yeah.
And stuff. Yeah.
Wow.
And shape it up a little bit and do the whole wheel and stuff. It was a good job. The
They
guy did. The guy out in LA, he did a good job. He's like, I'll shape up like your whole stomach and stuff too while you're under, because it was a part of like this package deal where like he's like, I'll give you a little liposuction on your stomach too. He tried to sell me on a bigger dick, but I was like, nah, man, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, I'll keep my small dick. So. Like, that's fine, man. I don't want to be a whole new person. I just want to be rid of the tids, you know? And that's like, in my mind, I'm like, this is my only hang up. If I do this and I get it to good enough, then I won't get addicted to plastic surgery. You know what I mean? Once you start adding too much on, like, you know what I mean? Like, but what it is, they get you, because the expensive part is going under. So they try to be like, well, you could get this job for this price, but then for a little bit more, we can make it look this much better.
Dude, I'd
for
be
a little
so
bit
sold.
more,
I'd be so sold.
For a little bit more, you can have a huge cock. You know what I mean? And you're like, oh, can it? Like $800 more, huge cock. And you're like, Jesus Christ. And you're like, you know what, man? I'm fine with my penis, so we're gonna be good here. So,
but okay, were you joking? Like, did he actually say he can make your dick bigger?
Yeah, because like he was like, I can like take like all the fat off your fupa area. Which will
Okay,
give
that's what I
you
was thinking.
Extra length.
Yeah,
And he's like,
yeah.
and that would be cheap because you're under anyway. You know
Right.
what I mean? So I just kind of
Yeah,
hook up
I
the
would've fucking done it.
liposuction machine to your fupa and just like give you 2 extra inches on your fupa right there. You know what I mean? And I was like, nah, man. I'm like,
You
I'm
just
good.
were like, I'm good.
I'll just push down my fupa for photos. I'll just push down the fupa for photos. That's what I'll do, bro. You know what I mean? So
Can
yeah.
I get Spanx for my fupa?
Yeah, it's all right. So that's like that's why it was so cheap on the offer. Yeah. Yeah, I think if you want to add dick, I think that's a bit more expensive. You know what I mean? But if you just want to take away fupa, that's actually cheap.
Yeah.
But apparently, taking away fupa will give you some extra.
Yeah, I mean,
extra look. You know what I mean? Not actual.
That
extra,
is like the
but-
definition of cosmetic.
Right? Yeah. It's just your better looking.
Wow.
Isn't that
Gender
crazy?
affirming surgery.
Yeah, isn't that wild? I always think about that. That's why I like trans people. That's why I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I did what you did.
Yeah,
you know
no,
what I mean?
like I get it.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I get what it's like.
I had surgery to become the idea of myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I actually like that actually makes sense to
Novel
me.
idea.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So that's why I totally support trans people. I'm like, God makes all kinds, man. You know what I mean? The way you got a mismatched brain, I got mismatched tits. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that ass.
For some
That's
reason,
how
God
that
gave
happens.
me tits, and I don't
Yeah,
want
and
them.
for some reason, God gave me a guy the tits of a lady, and for some reason, God gave you a guy the brain of a woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
No,
kinda-
absolutely.
That makes sense in my head as
Yeah.
to a thing that might happen, and so I guess validate it because if it doesn't,
Right.
if it doesn't affect me, I go, hey, that makes sense as a possibility. So sure, man. You know what I
Totally,
mean?
yeah.
Moving on now.
Yeah,
You know what I
especially-
mean? I think that's what a lot of trans people want, dude. They just want to be like, they just want people to be like, yeah, you exist. Cool.
Just
Moving
live
on.
their lives. They just want to live their
Yeah.
lives
They just
with
wanna be
that.
able to
Like,
get
just leave them
jobs.
alone.
Yeah.
Just leave. Yeah.
Every trans person I ever met is just like, can I just please have a job?
Yeah.
And a Netflix subscription.
Yeah, that's it. So you mentioned before that you struggled with anorexia because of this condition. So when did that start?
Well, I don't know if it was necessarily ever anorexia, but it kind of was this like over exercising I would do.
That's a thing, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would do is it was definitely like always like working on a calorie deficit and like a daily sort of addiction towards that basically.
Yeah, tracking everything.
This is interesting, man. I have a habit of doing this. They say success is, I was thinking about this because they say success is how high you bounce when you fall. That's like a big thing. Success is how high you bounce when you fall.
I like that.
Yeah. Because when you fall, you have to put yourself back together.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you worth? You know what I mean? What are you worth on the put together? You know?
Yeah.
So that's something I love. When I was in college, it's kind of interesting. My last 2 years of college, I got straight A's, flawless grades. My first 2 years of college, I failed out. It's kind of a weird thing. This is undergrad. And I failed out, and I failed out and sophomore. And I ended up, the school was like, hey, like you were here for 3 semesters, then you just had a bad semester. A friend of mine died too, and at college.
That'll do it.
And so a lot of just things I was like, and so I just kind of stopped caring about school. But I was getting C's beforehand anyway, right? And so then I failed out, and my school was like, yeah, but you went 3 semesters and then you got bad grades. And so just take a semester off and then we'll let you back in and blah, blah, blah. Okay, whatever. And so I went to a Catholic school, Franciscan University, and my family was very right-wing Catholic. At the time I was Catholic, I'm not anymore. But at the time I was. And so I went to, I found out that I failed out, and I didn't want to go home and work for my family's business for a semester. That would have been what I had to do, would have had to do. And so I was like, I don't want to do that. And I found out that you could, well, I already knew this, but there were these programs where you could volunteer a year of your life to the Catholic Church, the way like missionaries do for Mormons. You know what I mean? Right. So I volunteered a year of my life to the Catholic Church, swear to God. And I got sent to be the dean of students at this, but with a bunch of other dudes too, a bunch of other college guys. We got sent to be deans, and in my case, a religion teacher too.
Right.
For whatever reason, they were like, "You're going to teach religion, awesome." Well, okay, whatever. It was a school in Dublin, Ireland, called Dublin Oak Academy, which is a school. It's a boarding school. It's an academy for rich kids, like the children of billionaires, from Mexico, South America, and Spain.
And why are they in Ireland? Just because their billionaire families are there?
There's a couple of reasons for this. One, these kids are going to private schools because they're the children of rich people. You know what I mean? It's what's called an English language school. So they go to Ireland, so they're only allowed to speak English for the entire year.
Okay.
Now, the reason it's in Ireland, believe it or not, is because it's in an island, and these kids, like I said, are the children of billionaires. And they're high school kids, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they were like sophomores, juniors, and seniors. All of high school, all high school ages. And they were the children of billionaires, right? And they were sent there to learn English. But also the reason it was in Ireland is because they were the targeters for kidnappers. They were the target kids for kidnappers. You know that movie Man on Fire?
Yeah.
I've never seen it, but they would tell us, they're like, it's the movie Man on Fire. I'm like, okay. I'm like, no, I'm not sure. So it's like I don't even know if that movie was out. I think maybe sometime what I would have to check the date on that movie. But either way, it's the Man on Fire situation. It was like that. It was either before or after people would reference it as like, oh, that's the Man on Fire, like sort of thing, right? Where it's so all these kids, like I said, they were the children of billionaires, and they all had stories where like their siblings or cousins got like kidnapped and like a toe got cut off. You know what I mean?
Oh my God!
Right?
Yeah. So it was like it was a matter of safety.
It was an ongoing threat for these kids, right? And for these teenagers, and so yeah, that's why they were at this academy in Ireland, and it was an academy, and so they would play soccer, football against all these other Irish academies and stuff, and they would do really well because they were all Hispanic kids, you know what I mean? So they were all like crazy good,
running circles around
at soccer, you know what I mean? And these kids were like, Jesus Christ. Here's the other thing. Some of the kids were there because it was an English language school. But some of the kids were there. It was an all-boys boarding school, right? And there was an all-girls one that was like... There was an all-girls one that was right through the woods. There was just a woods in between. But they had the basketball courts. They had the basketball gymnasium over the all-girls school.
Yeah.
So the kids had to drive to play basketball. The kids had to drive over there to do that. But it was right through the woods. But the kids didn't know that because whenever we drove them there, we would take this really long route. I swear to God. So the kids thought it was like miles away. You know what I mean? But it's just this really long circular route and stuff. He was gone straight through the woods, apparently. I don't know. Apparently, that's what I was told. But anyway, what it was is a lot of these kids were like, I don't want to say trouble kids, but I guess like this was not a military academy, but I guess it was like one step before a military academy for some of these kids.
It was still boarding school.
It was a punishment apparently to go to an all boys boarding school for a lot of these kids because they had gotten kicked out of some other school and their parents like bought them into this school basically.
I can imagine at 16 that being the worst thing to ever.
And so a lot of these kids were just assholes. But a lot of them were great guys too. You know what I mean? And it was fun. It was really a great time. It really was.
That's so cool that you had that as an option.
Yeah. And I had so many. So when I was there, getting back to losing weight. Yeah. When I was there, right, I had nothing to do. Because I'm just like literally, we would go on all these field trips. So I saw like all of Ireland.
So awesome.
I went on these like long trips to Italy, these long trips to Italy and the Austrian Alps. Wow. So one like long trip to Italy, like a 2-week trip to Italy where we saw all of Italy, and then like a week-long trip to the Austrian Alps, or 2-week-long trip to like the Austrian Alps at one point. It was during holidays because they wouldn't go home during holidays. Right. Because if they went home during holidays, their parents knew they wouldn't get back on a plane.
Yeah.
I swear to God, they just be like, I'm not getting back on that plane. You know what I mean? And so anyway, what it was is that these kids would vacation at these the ritziest of places because they were the children of billionaires, and we would go because none of the priests were allowed to travel with them. You know what I mean? So we were like in charge. You know what I mean? On these trips,
and you're like a 20 something, like an
literally,
early 20s.
Yeah, literally early 20s and stuff. We would have the teachers there too. Like they would go to, and some of them were in like their 40s and stuff like that.
Right.
You know
there were checks and balances.
Yeah, in that way and everything and stuff. And then there'd be like priests there every day, but it would be like local priests. You know what I mean? Right. Because of course there's a network, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I mean it's Ireland, so there's lots of Catholic.
So they would just, when we go to Italy, there would just be whatever Italian priests were a part
Right,
know,
right,
just
right,
like a
right,
phone
right.
call, you know what I mean? Our group is coming to this thing, meet up with them, blah, 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 and everything like that and stuff. And so, yeah, it was this thing where we traveled all over, and I was there for a year. And because I was in this disciplined place where these kids basically, and I think that was why I got sent there, because they're like, this guy needs discipline. This guy needs structure and order, right?
Right.
And I kind of did, because these kids had a regimen. So, of course, I had the same regimen. And because I had a regimen for the first time ever, I'm like, I can just exercise every day.
Right.
I can basically count calories.
Yeah.
I can do that in a very regimented way. So I started eating, it's true, I started eating for breakfast every day. I started eating, which is the greatest cereal in the world. It existed here in the United States for like 1 year.
Oh,
and
no.
and I think they got rid of it because of allergies. I think probably it's called Crunchy Nut cereal, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Okay, it's made by Kellogg's. It's Kellogg's Crunchy Nut. It does not exist anymore in the United States. In fact, you can buy Crunchy Nut boxes that are soon to expire, because like the last one about to expire.
Oh
You can buy
my
them for
God.
a premium now online, because people are hoarding them basically.
Yeah.
It's cornflakes. But you know how this, of course, frosted flakes are just frosted cornflakes,
Yeah.
of course. So it's the same idea. But in Europe, they have cornflakes, they have frosted flakes, and then they have crunchy nut. Crunchy nut is cornflakes covered in tiny little pieces of peanuts and honey.
Wow. It's like a roasted peanut. Sounds like.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, honey roasted peanuts,
Yeah.
on top of,
Sounds
attached
amazing.
to cornflakes, and it makes the milk taste like honey. And so I would eat like 2-3 bowls of this for breakfast every day, but I have to wake up at like 6 a.m. Right?
Right.
You know what I mean? And then I have breakfast at like 7:30, something like that. Right? We went to church first, breakfast right after, and I'd eat like 2-3 bowls of this, but then I would eat no carbs for the rest of the day, and I'd just run.
Yeah.
Like for like 2 hours a day, I'd just
Right.
run, because I had to, because when all the kids were in classes, I would just go running.
Right.
Like literally, you
And
just
you-
sat there when all the kids were in classes, and you just waited for them to be out of classes, and then you just literally. And I taught a religion there too, so sometimes I had to teach. But if I didn't have to teach, I was just running. They had a gym there. I could work out in the gym, and the gym was only for the teachers and the deans
awesome.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Because like they legally couldn't allow kids to work out.
Right.
Even though high
Yeah.
schools in America do it, but for whatever reason they're like, no, you know what I mean.
Go be children. Right.
And so the kids would just play basketball and soccer, and we had a workout gym to ourselves. It was great, you know what I mean? So, man, it was such a fun time. It really was. I had a blast. I had a great year. Like I said, some of the kids were incredible assholes.
Yeah.
But even some of the asshole kids I liked, because they
Right.
were like fun assholes in
Yeah.
that way, right? In fact, it was kind of funny. At one time, they'd go, okay, Mr. Camerota, they called me. They go, Mr. Camerota, the Father Cepeda, he was the head priest there. He's like, we have these 10 students that are problem students. And so there's section 1, 2, and 3, and then these are the sections, section 1, 2, and 3. It was like grades, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it was only 3 of them, even though it was like a 4-year. You get the idea, you know
Right.
what I mean? Sort of range. They kind of like grouped them up in that way. I don't know if high school works differently in South America, but whatever. But either way, they're like, you're going to be in charge of a new section 4, which is like the 12 bad kids. You know what I mean? It's just going to be you. Okay. Sounds fine. You know what I mean? And they were like, they seem to like you enough. You know what I mean? And I think it was they meant for me to be like the disciplinary guy. I don't know. Okay. Either way, day one, I had to oversee the study hall of section 4. So it's the first time that it's just me and like these 12 like bad kids, right? So day one, I go, hey. And the second the door closed for study hall, I go, hey, here's the deal. You're all here because you're bad kids. I'm going to let you do whatever you want. Seriously, talk with each other. Do whatever you want. Talk in Spanish. You're not allowed to talk in Spanish. You are now. You know what I mean? Like, I truly don't care. I just want to be left alone. You just want to be left alone. So here's the deal. If anyone, I'm never going to tell on you.
Yeah.
Everything's good. You guys are acting great. Break as many rules as you want, as long as you don't get caught. If anyone else comes around and you get caught in front of me, I have to, do the song and dance of being angry and everything like that. But otherwise, I don't care. Otherwise, I could care less.
Right.
You know what I mean? And just carry on. You know what I mean? Talk amongst yourselves. You know, you're not supposed to talk in study hall. Just keep it low enough that nobody comes by. You know what I mean? You're not supposed to talk in Spanish. Do it. Talk in Spanish. I don't care.
Right.
The whole wheel and deal. So anyway, Section 4 started to be so much fun that they had to disband it. You know what I mean? Because like the kids in Section 4 were like, we like it here. And and they're like, no, this was supposed to be a punishment. You're supposed to want to go back to your groups. And they're like, this is a bit more fun.
We're in Club 4. We don't care.
Yeah. And so, it was kind of legendary in that way and stuff. And
whoa.
Yeah, it was really great.
How was it adjusting?
And at one time, they told me to punish a kid. This kid named Pablo Alvarez. And I refused to punish him because I just thought it was funny. This kid named Pablo Alvarez, this one time, they had trouble with the kids keeping their tables clean after snack at nighttime. And this kid, Pablo Alvarez, this guy, Mr. Dorn, he was the soccer coach and one of the teachers, right? And he goes, he had these soccer jerseys. And there's like 8 people at every table, right? And he had 8 soccer jerseys. And he's like, whatever table is the cleanest, is the absolute cleanest, is going to get these soccer jerseys. Okay, right? Yeah. So, of course, like everyone's cleaning their tables and everything like that, right? Well, Pablo Alvarez, what an asshole, this kid. Everyone's supposed to clean their tables, right? Not on Pablo's dime. So Pablo goes around to every table and goes, give me your garbage. And they go, what? He goes, give me your garbage. Pablo takes everyone's garbage from everyone's table, and he piles all of it onto his table. So every last table is clear, except for Pablo and his 7 friends sitting there with shit-eating grins with a giant pile of trash on their table. So none of it had technically gotten cleaned up. You know what I mean? It was just all on one table now. It just got moved, right? And Mr. Dorn now has to pick the cleanest table versus the dirtiest table, which just has all the trash on it, right? I'm sitting there, I'm like dying laughing, and inside I'm like, this is brilliant, you know what I mean? But Pablo was in Section 4.
Right.
Okay, so they were like, you know, afterwards they're like, Mr. Camerota, you have to punish Pablo. And I just refused to. I just straight up refused to. I think that was the beginning of the end of Section 4.
Yeah.
I was like, no, because and it's my whole thing. I think it's the comedian in me. I was like, he didn't mean it maliciously. He meant it to be funny. If I punish him, he will not understand why he's being punished because he didn't mean it maliciously.
Yeah.
He meant it to be funny. He won't get why I don't get the joke. And he knows I do get the joke.
Right.
So I'm just not going to punish him. Someone else can if they want to, but it ain't going to be Joe Camerota. You know, I just made that stand. Yeah.
No, and it kind of sounds like this is like a perfect story for like a white savior movie. Where like you're like this white guy and you see these Spanish kids and you're like, you guys want me to tell them they're bad.
Oh, they were very white Spanish kids, by the way.
They're white Spanish kids.
These were children of billionaires.
Oh,
you know
that's
what I mean?
true. I was
Some of them were a little
kids.
browner than others, but you know, this
well,
is
for the sake of the movie, you'll cast
they are
really
they are
brown
100%
kids.
Spanish blood. I assure you.
Yeah.
Their families have not
right.
intermingled with the Indian blood of South America too heavily throughout the generations.
May be some inbreeding happening in the bloodline.
So yeah, they are very heavily European.
But it still stands that it's like
if you saw any of these kids, you'd be like, no, that's a white person.
Right. No, I know what you're talking about. But I think that just because they're misbehaved, it's like the idea is you didn't do this, but the idea is to be like, you're being bad, you are bad, like you're bad, and it's like, I'm gonna punish a bad kid, and you're like, well, he didn't do it because he wasn't trying to hurt anybody, he just did it for the joke of it.
Yes, that was the thing that I just knew, man. I knew that for myself. I knew that from how I behave.
Right.
And like that, and so I'm like, you know, I knew that there was no maliciousness behind it. Big Joe Okerson has that phrase, don't pay attention to what I say, pay attention to how I say it. And how he was doing it was not malicious. You know what I mean?
No, totally.
He was being a dick, but, you know, but whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's funny sometimes.
And it's good to let kids be themselves.
Right? He was playing the game.
Yeah.
He was consciously losing the game in order to make a joke.
Right.
And that's a funny joke.
Yeah, that is funny.
That is something that I value in that way. So yeah.
So you were there for a year.
I was there for a year, and I lost like like 90 pounds.
Yeah.
Not joking. I literally have like a 6-pack by the end of the year. And
Right.
stuff, just because I literally operated like a cow. I operated, and what it was is we had like unlimited food there. So I could eat like unlimited protein for the rest of the day, basically.
Right.
So I was just never
Gains
hungry.
on gains on gains.
Literally at the end of every, well, I don't even know about that. I was just like at the end of every night, I would go into the kitchen and I'd just make like a 10-egg omelet with like tons of cheese. I wasn't even thinking about gains on gains on gains. I was just thinking about just being full, you know? And I would eat tons of fruit because they had tons of fruit there. They had these coffee maker machines because everything was just like, you know, to the
best.
Yeah, because they were literally the children
5-star.
of billionaires.
Yeah.
And so they had these Bailey's coffee, I want to say. Or no, I don't know. I forget the name of the coffee. There's a famous coffee type over there. If I saw it, I'd know. But I'd switch between coffee and tea. They have those every place has those tea kettles, those electric tea kettles that you just heat up and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I would just, and there would always be fresh fruit in the fruit bowl all day long.
Sounds like an oasis.
So I'd just eat one banana after another, one orange after another, one apple after another. And I'd just go, yeah, it really was. It was paradise in a lot of ways. And we didn't, and I'll tell you this was an interesting thing. So us deans, we lived in the dormitories, right? Like we were like sort of in the, so the kids lived in these dorm rooms with like, you know, 4, you know, beds, and then we had our own like apartments basically in the dormitories. But on Saturday nights, we were able to, so on Saturday nights, they would let us like leave basically without the, I don't know why. There was like no one watching the kids. I don't know what they got up to basically. But on Saturday nights, after the kids went to bed, we got to go down to the kitchen area and just get drunk for like 2 hours. You know what I mean? Every Saturday night. Like they'd be like, yeah, if you guys want, you could just like,
let
like,
loose.
Just like, but like be to bed. It was like the kids went to bed at 10 and they were like, just be to bed by around midnight.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we had 2 hours to get drunk, and you didn't want to drink for more than that because we had to be up the next morning, you know, and everything like that. But it was always, Sundays were a field trip day, and Saturdays were always a field trip to like a museum or like bowling or something like that, basically. And then Sundays were always a hiking field trip, and so you just had to wake up, go to church, eat breakfast, get on a bus in your hiking clothes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, you know, you kind of had to half shower, you know.
Yeah.
Then you could sleep on the bus, and then you would just hike off a hangover.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is like, if you're hiking a mountain, dude, and you're hungover, yeah, it's hell, but like halfway in,
you'll
like,
feel good when it's done.
You're just like halfway in, you're not even hungover
right.
anymore.
You're like, I sweat that shit out.
It's just, so excruciating in that way, basically. And so it was kind of oddly ideal.
Yeah.
As odd as that sounds.
And a way to not be sedentary.
And it was our one chance to get drunk. You know? It was our one chance to like be human in that way.
Totally.
So,
and were the other deans at the school were all people from your Franciscan college?
No.
From all over?
From all over. And one of them was from Franciscan. And he was just there as a volunteer working locally in Ireland, but he was like living in the same place that he just got sent there. But we had the biggest amount of what were called coworkers, which I think there were like 11 or 12 of us, which was a lot because a lot of people who got sent places, they just got sent places where it was just like them and a priest. You know what I mean? And that sucks. Yeah. I mean, you're just like a traveling like volunteer
assistant
with
to
a priest. Yeah. Like that's like literally a lot of people got that. You know what I mean?
Oh, that sucks.
Right. And a lot of times it was in like poor areas. A lot of times you had to actually help the poor.
Right.
God forbid.
You were helping the billionaires.
Yeah. I literally was like, well, it looks like these billionaires need some church services. Oh, you're going skiing in the Austrian Alps? Don't mind if I come along for the Lord, do you?
How selfless. You really were holding up the tenets of the religion. Amazing. Treat others the way you'd want to be treated.
Right. You want me to sneak out in Germany and go to an all-night club? No, for the Lord? No way. That sounds great, you know?
Wow. Coveting your neighbor's wife at a Berlin sex club.
But like no matter even if I got sent to a poor rural Kentucky town, I still would have snuck out to like some local dive bar. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you still would have been you. Yeah.
So it's funny in that way. But yeah, it is funny how the Catholic Church, man, they just.
You went
I'm
to
not
church?
Catholic anymore. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna ask you about that. But when you were out in Ireland doing this, you had to do church every single day.
Oh yeah.
Every day.
I still pray a rosary every single day, still till today, every single day on a habit. As a buddy of mine says, like, hey, like some addictions are really hard to quit. A buddy of mine, Francisco, says that. He's like, I don't go to church. I've
and
quit
you're not
that.
Catholic anymore.
I've quit that, but just out of fear of hell. I literally pray a rosary
out of a compulsion.
Out of fear of like maybe that is true.
Do you pray it on a rosary, or do you just have it mentally?
I have a rosary, a pair of rosary beads. I do usually. I pray on a rosary and everything like that and stuff. But the other reason for that, there's a lot of reasons for that. I'm actually a practicing occultist, which is an interesting thing.
I was gonna ask what you do now.
Which I can explain, and a lot of people, it's kind of a weird thing because I am an actual occultist. A lot of people don't know what that is, but it's basically a philosophy. It's just an idea. So I'm not a Catholic anymore. I stopped doing that.
Can I ask when you quit that?
I quit that slowly. You kind of quit slowly.
Yeah,
and
it's
then you
never
keep on
something.
bouncing back and forth and stuff like that. I consciously quit that probably about
like when you stopped going to church.
I stopped believing maybe like 10 years ago.
Okay.
11 years ago. When I stopped practicing it, maybe like altogether, maybe like what was that, like 4 years ago?
Oh wow! So like
the reason is I got a girlfriend and fell in love, and I was trying to bribe God, so I started going back to church. It was during the pandemic,
right?
You know what I mean?
We all had been,
and I wanted it to work out, and
and
I was like, I was really in love with my girlfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, this is good. Like I want this to work out. And so I started. This is actually a funny story, which is why I sometimes wonder. This weird things like this happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start going to church every day, and my girlfriend at the time, she was Jewish, and she wanted to go to church with me. I'm like, no, please don't. I don't want to go. You know, just trying to bribe God, right?
Right.
So, I like taking walks in the morning while smoking weed. So I'd go and I get coffee, and I'd just walk to this church, and I'd just attend church. It's during the pandemic, and then I just walk home, right? And on the day she broke up with me at nighttime. I was living with her, and next morning I woke up, right? And I stayed calm, you know what I mean? I was like, well, I don't know what's gonna happen, so I'll go to bed. And I next morning I wake up and I'm like, well, I'm gonna walk to church again. I go and I roll my J, smoking weed. I get my coffee, go to church. It's true. Attend church and everything like that. I think I received communion probably. And I'm walking out, right? As I'm walking out, the only reason I bring up this person's race is because I think it illustrates a funnier point.
Okay.
Just you got to picture Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Okay,
yeah.
I'm just walking out of a church. Okay, there's this short, like kind of portly black dude.
Uh-huh.
Okay, just a short kind of portly black dude.
Yeah.
Okay, and he's, I kid you not, spread out on the hood of a car. And he's yelling, like, at his girlfriend in the car, Charlene, please, no, don't leave me. Charlene, please, no, don't leave me. He's literally on, and she's in the car with her window down, yelling at him, being like, no, I'm leaving you. And he's literally spread, like, all hands and legs on the hood of the car,
oh my God,
blocking her. And she's like, I need to go to work. And he's like, please don't leave me. Like, please take me back, blah, blah, blah. And I immediately thought, oh, don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that guy.
God
and so I just,
isn't
that weird?
That's crazy.
And so I went home, and even though I was completely heartbroken, I'm like, you know what? Like, time to just move on no matter what. Isn't that weird?
That's crazy.
Isn't that weird? So here's the thing, is that this kind of gets me into my overarching point. Even though I do have these Catholic tendencies, I'm what's called an occultist. An occultist is this. An occultist is a person who, it's a very interesting thing. It's a person who, it starts off with this. I believe that words aren't real. So I believe, what I mean by that is I believe that words are symbols for ideas. You know what I
Okay.
mean? The ideas themselves are real. But a dictionary uses words to define other words because words aren't real. You know what I
Right.
mean? They're all made up. You know what I mean? That's why a dictionary uses words to define other words because all the words are made up. You know what I mean? In that way, right? So the ideas are real, but the words are symbols for ideas,
Okay.
right? And that's the thing that most religions don't want you to know. That's why religions hate the occult, because the
Yeah.
occult tells you that.
Right.
The occult are like, hey, the ideas behind the words are real, but the words themselves are not real. Religion hates that because religion wants there to be the word of
The
God.
word.
You
yeah.
know what I mean?
And spread the word.
So religion hates that because they want to be able to control the words. You know
Right.
what I mean? If you know the words aren't real, then you reflect on the ideas instead of on the words. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's that's what it is. So occultism is realizing the unreality of words, and then so as a belief, you believe in the unreality of words, and what you believe is you believe that that's what God is. God is literally the thing behind the words. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The thing that the thing that makes the things happen. You know what I mean? The the power of life. You know what I mean? The
Yeah.
things behind the words. So God is the unreality of words, and then as a practice, once you realize God is the unreality of words, what you realize is that as a practice, you're supposed to organize your own imagination. So religion doesn't want you to do that because then you're just going to pick a hodgepodge of stuff that works for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, what's interesting about that is, and this is kind of a reflection on how God works, there's a poem by G.K. Chesterton, and I think it's called Golden Leaves is the poem, but there's a stanza of the poem. Hopefully I get it right. It says, but now a great thing in the street seems any human nod, where shift in strange democracy the million masks of God. And the idea is God is the ideas, the thing behind the words. So God is constantly talking to us through our thoughts. That's literally just God, you know what I mean? The thing on the other side, you know what I mean? Talking to us through our thoughts. And we're supposed to take those thoughts that come about and then create our persona, which are these masks of God that come out there into the world. But we're supposed to organize our own imagination. So there's the million masks of God. There's all the different options that we have at any moment of the masks that we can wear. And those are all the million masks of God. But it's our decision and it's our responsibility to organize our own imagination and wear the correct mask versus an incorrect mask.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
That is something. And so is an incorrect mask something that's like not true to yourself?
Well, something that's just, I would say something that's evil. You know what I mean? Because it's all part of the whole. So as crazy as it is to say, being a murderer is one of the masks of God, but it's not the mask that God wants you to pick.
Right.
So that's the thing. Is even though it is a mask of God, it's not the ideal mask for you.
Right.
It won't be.
Right.
But religion argues most people aren't responsible enough to understand. If you confront priests, like religious leaders, with this, they will say a lot of what you're saying is true. And I even agree with a lot of what you're saying, but most people can't understand it. And if you tell them to organize their own imagination, they're going to pick very evil things. They're not going to default to the recommendations of religion.
The idea being that people are inherently bad and need the guidance of religion.
Well, they're inherently impulsive, and so it takes a deeper understanding to understand that certain masks are better than other masks.
Okay,
and that choosing, kindness over anger is a better mask.
Right.
Sometimes when you're angry, you're like, you know what, I could choose the mask of anger right now. But I'm going to choose to get to the other side of this situation, and then reevaluate how I even got there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Very
you know,
healthy.
things and things of that nature. And it just requires me wearing a different mask in this moment. And most people can't. It's very complicated. Well, here's the thing: is I don't think it would be. I think you could teach that to people. I just don't think they do. I think people lose a lot of power when you do that. The people who want power lose a lot of power.
Yeah, they lose control.
And when you say everyone is supposed to be taught to organize their own imagination as long as it's innocuous. Right. Truly what the argument is, hey, organize your own imagination as long as it's innocuous. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're this, does it not harm anybody? Cool. You know what I mean? You're behaving this way, does it not harm anybody? Cool. And the powers
Yeah.
that be they really don't want that rainbow of a world. They really
Yeah.
don't. You know what I
That's,
mean?
oh man. How did you find occultism?
Well, that's very interesting because uh, I guess okay. There's a few things. The Catholic Church said it was bad, so there's that right there.
Yeah.
And so
Don't touch it.
anything that's innocuous that's labeled bad, meaning if someone just goes, that book is bad.
Yeah.
I go, how bad can a fucking book be?
Yeah, how
you know what I
bad is
mean?
it?
You know what I mean? It's just a
Right.
book. You know what I mean? So that was the first thing, right? If you tell me something is bad and it's not inherently bad in and of itself, you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
book. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, I'll start to read these books. One of it was that I started to read a lot of Catholic philosophers when I was in high school. And a lot of these Catholic philosophers would ask a lot of really great questions, and then they wouldn't have answers, and instead the answer was always Jesus. And it was always just like a weird catch-all answer. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, the answer is that there's this one guy that can control everything, and you're not that guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know,
Yeah.
there's Neo from the Matrix, and you're not Neo from
Yeah.
the Matrix, so
Right.
shut up. You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
It's like a cop out.
In a lot of ways, you know what I mean? Or that a lot of your suffering is just for this thing in this next life. You know what I mean? There's all
Yes.
these kind of very convenient answers that I didn't think were good answers. And so I was like, I will read other people. That's really all it was. You know what I mean? And a lot of it was I started to read a lot of great books. A lot of great books, a lot of great novels are written by secret occultists, oddly enough. You know what I mean? A lot of people, it's kind of interesting. A lot of people, Joan of Arc was killed for being a witch.
Yeah.
Very much an occult figure. Very much so. G.K. Chesterton, who I said that poem before.
Yes.
Very much, when you read his writings, very much an occult writer in a lot of ways. Very much spoke of the unreality of words in that manner that I spoke of earlier. But then there's a lot of other writers like C.S. Lewis, or not C.S. Lewis, Lewis Carroll. C.S. Lewis to some degree too, but Lewis Carroll in a huge way with Alice in Wonderland. The whole
Right.
point of Alice in Wonderland is that words aren't real.
Yeah.
That's literally the entire point of the book. James M. Barrie's Peter Pan is another occult story. Also, L. Frank Baum's The Wizard of Oz. These are all stories that are laced with occult meanings. And I would read these other philosophy books that weren't Catholic, and they would reference those books. But even the Catholic ones would too, if that makes sense. Like Catholic philosophers would be like, oh, well, they talk about fairy tales, and they'd be like, well, sometimes villains happen in your life because it makes it a good story. You know, and so that's the way fairy tales work, is that villains
Right.
come about because it makes it a good story in that way. So I'd read all these philosophers, and they were all pointing towards all these ideas, like Lewis Carroll, of the fact that words weren't real. But then there was this guy, and he's like the original Marilyn Manson. His name is Aleister Crowley, okay? And he was like the guy that was like, I am an occultist, okay? And I started reading his books. And the interesting thing about his books is they were saying the exact same thing as these other people. He just had this Marilyn Manson persona,
Right.
okay? But he was writing the exact same stuff as these other philosophers, just with a Marilyn Manson persona.
Okay.
So that was like an interesting thing that happened.
Right.
And he wrote this book called Book 4. And it had this story in it which really explained religion. And it's a parable in Book 4. And I don't think he wrote the parable, but the parable goes like this. Two guys are on a train. One guy is holding a box with holes in it, okay? And the other guy says to the guy who's holding the box with holes in it, he goes, hey, I notice you have a box with holes in it. He goes, is there an animal inside that box? And the guy who has a box with holes in it goes to the other guy on the train. He goes, yeah. He goes, there is an animal inside this box. And the other guy goes, no way. What animal is it? And the guy holding the box with the holes in it goes, oh, inside this box is a mongoose. And the other guy goes, there's a mongoose inside that box? And the guy holding the box goes, yeah. He goes, my brother, he drank himself into delirium. And now he sees snakes climbing the walls and snakes all over him. And so because of that, I'm bringing him a mongoose so that the mongoose can eat the snakes. And the other guy, the guy without the box, says to the guy with the box, he goes, hey, man, he goes, I don't know how to tell you this. I don't know if you know this, but those snakes that your brother are seeing because he's drinking himself to delirium, those snakes he's seen, they're not real snakes. And the guy holding the box with the holes in it opens up the box and he goes, I know. They're not real snakes. That's why I'm bringing my brother an invisible mongoose.
Yeah.
So they're invisible snakes, and that's why he's bringing. It's an empty box. You know what I mean? He opens the box, it's empty, and that's why he's bringing his brother an invisible mongoose because the snakes are invisible. And so the idea is this: is when you have a visible problem, you go and you bring it. If you have a car and your car is blue and you want it to be pink, you bring your car to a painter. You know what I mean? That's what you do. You don't bring it to a priest because it's a visible problem. You go to priests with an invisible problem. And they have an invisible solution for your invisible problem.
Yes.
And so this book called Book 4, through that parable, had explained all of religion to me. I'm like, oh, that's how religion works.
Yeah.
Then, because that was labeled an occult book, I just started reading occult books because I'm like, that's genius. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that kind of fully turned the key because that was like the guy that was like, you're not supposed to read this guy's books.
Yeah.
So that was like the guy that was like apparently like doing crazy sex ritual magic. You know what I mean? Like way back in the day. In fact, there's the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. You know how they go, it was 20 years ago today, Sgt. Pepper taught the band to play. 20 years ago to the day that Sgt. Pepper's came out, 20 years ago before, Aleister Crowley died.
Okay.
So he's like this Marilyn Manson occult figure in England that was doing like sex tantric magic, you know what I mean, back when it was like super forbidden and everything like that. So I'm reading this guy's works and it's really stuff that's blowing my mind. So I'm like, okay, but this is like the Marilyn Manson guy. I don't want to be this guy, you know what I mean? Now, there's this other dude that I found from that called Robert Anton Wilson. And this was a guy, because all these occult ideas then in the 60s, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, began to take root here in the United States through the countercultural movement. And so you had these guys like Jim Parsons, Timothy Leary, and this other guy named Robert Anton Wilson. And this guy named Robert Anton Wilson wrote this book, this occult book called, it's a book, it's considered to be a book in occultism. It's called Prometheus Rising. And it's the most genius book I've ever read in my entire life. And it's all about the unreality of words. He started a religion called Discordianism, which is a parody religion because he just wanted to prove that you could, just make up a religion and everything like that. But he created this book called Prometheus Rising. And it's this genius book, and it's an occult book. It's considered occultism. But it's all about how you're supposed to organize your own imagination. But what it talks about and what it wakes you up to is that all of reality is a form of Stockholm Syndrome. So what happens is when you join a religion or you join any organization, you become a part of the comedy community, whatever the hell, you know what I mean? You join any organization. Well, when you join an organization, you know what Stockholm Syndrome is.
Yes.
So a person gets kidnapped, right?
Yep.
And then in order to get better treatment from their kidnapper, they begin to empathize with their kidnapper in order to get better treatment from their kidnapper. They begin to believe in the kidnapper's cause in order to get better treatment from their kidnapper. So he made this argument, which is a genius argument, that that's how reality works. You show up at a place and you go, hey, how do I got to cooperate to get better treatment?
Yeah.
You're constantly in these forms of being kidnapped by these worlds where you're it's constant Stockholm Syndrome, and you cannot get away from this constant Stockholm Syndrome at your job, at the comedy community. How do I have to cooperate to get better treatment? Where do I draw the line? You know what I mean? Everything like that. And so his whole thing is the only way out of that is to organize your own imagination. And you can never fully escape that, but the more you strive to just organize your own imagination, to kind of write your own ticket in that way, the farther away you're going to get from that Stockholm Syndrome. And I was like, wow, that's what I want to be. that's who I am going forward. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it just changed my mindset. And like I said, he's not Aleister Crowley. He's not like killing
Right.
pigeons in like a back
Right.
room before he has sex with his 8 mistresses. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To try to get, the winter to be better this year. You know what I mean?
Right.
He's just a guy saying, hey, forget all about
Yeah.
that. You know what I mean? The end result of all of that is you realize it didn't work. The end result
Right.
of all of that is you just write your own religion and adhere to it and make it as simple as possible. Do yourself a favor.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
with that, I mean, so interesting. You're just a wealth of knowledge on so many things, especially this. But I'm curious though, like, why do you feel like you need to have this Stockholm syndrome relationship with praying the rosary every day?
I'll tell you why. That's actually I kind of do that. There's a couple of things. One, my mom prays the rosary every day. So it's like this way that I don't have a good relationship with my mom
Right.
because of all these complicated things that have gone on in my
course.
family. So it's a way of staying close to my mom.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
yeah. It's like
Mentally.
almost like a telepathic relationship.
Yeah, it's like weirdly a telepathic relationship.
Yeah.
But there's something even more so. This is an interesting thing. Remember I told you I came from that right-wing Catholic background?
Yes.
Okay. I get out to USC, graduate film school at USC, and I get in there, right? Now, they only accept 50 kids per semester. I think they accept more now, which a lot of people are angry about because it's devaluing the degree. I think they accept 75, and everyone's like, well, it used to be 50.
Yeah.
Whatever. But they only accept 50 kids per semester. It starts again every single semester, the whole program, the graduate program. And when you get there, you meet these 50 kids, and you're not in the program for 1 year. Or kids, I say kids. We're all in our 20s. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, but kids.
yeah. And but some even older. You know what I mean? But either way, most in our 20s. And we're there, and it's one of everybody. So it's like they casted a room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's, I swear, because I came from this right-wing Catholic background, that's why I got picked. I
Right.
swear. Because they literally cast a room. You know what I mean? No one is left behind in that way, right?
Yeah.
And they want you to work together and kind of meet people of different cultures and everything like that, right? So anyway, when you get there, they go, hey, there's all these people in charge here. You know what I mean? There's Dean Daly, the head of the school. There's who's this kind of figure, behind the curtain. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. There's all your teachers and everything. And and there's different programs. There's the producing program. There's the writing program. There's the production program, which I was in, which includes producing and writing if you want it to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's the critical studies program. Now, the critical studies program is where you can get a PhD in film, but it's not in filmmaking, okay?
Yeah.
It's critical studies. So you're becoming a film reviewer.
Right.
You're becoming a person that writes philosophy about filmmaking. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So the MFA that I have, that's a terminal degree. Then there's this other doctorate degree, which is in critical studies. You know what I mean? So I have an MFA in production, critical studies. Now, in critical studies, there's this teacher, and it's all part of the same building, you know what I mean, the same campus and everything like that. We're all there together. There's this teacher there named Drew, and we have, even the production program, everyone takes classes within each other, you know what I mean, a little bit, you know what I mean, that, so we dip our toes into each other's in that way. There's this guy there who's the head of the critical studies program. His name is Drew Casper, and he is at the time, he was the highest paid professor in the world, okay, this guy. And I find out that, and this is an interesting thing, this guy, highest paid professor in the world, okay? And he's kind of like the guy that's kind of in charge there. You know what I mean? Like everyone like really is like, oh, like that's like what makes our school. Because he was like best friends with Steven Spielberg.
Okay.
And he taught the Steven Spielberg class at the school. And Steven Spielberg came and taught the last class of the Steven Spielberg class. And Drew Casper taught it. And so he was like close friends with Steven Spielberg. Yeah. And that was a big reason why he was like, just
next to greatness.
Next to greatness at the school. Okay. Now, here's the thing about the guy, Drew Casper, he's an open gay man. And, but here's what's interesting, is he used to be a Catholic priest. Still is, technically, Jesuit priest. And I guess he came out as open gay. And because of that, they asked him to leave.
Right.
But I don't know. This is like complete hearsay in that way. Okay. But he used to be the film historian for the Vatican. And that's how he got the job as head of critical studies at USC. So film historian for the Vatican to the #1 film school in the world. You know what I mean? So in my mind, I'm like, that's some Illuminati type shit.
Literally.
You know what I mean? Like literally film historian of the Vatican to, Jesuit priest, you know what I mean? Film historian of the Vatican to head of the critical studies program at the #1 film school in the world. Okay. So I'm like, that's some Illuminati type shit. Well, one day I'm standing there. And because I've I've grew up in these right-wing Catholic places, and I know priests who are in orders. Priests who are in orders are very different than priests who are. When we think about priests, we think about parish priests here in the United States, what are called diocesan priests.
Yeah.
Priests and orders are very different. A lot of orders are they're like military orders.
Right.
So the priests are like very physically fit. They're like ninjas. You know what I mean? And they don't work with local communities. They literally live in like monasteries doing like ninja stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of times they work at universities and stuff, like high-level universities. So he was this guy, apparently, so an open gay man, very proper, physically fit, ex-priest from what I understand, but not technically, because I guess from what I know, you can never leave. Once you're a priest for life, right? But he's the head of the critical studies program, never dresses as a priest, dresses as a professor. But one day I see him outside in the courtyard of the SCA, the School of Cinematic Arts. I see him outside in the courtyard. And he's pacing back and forth, rosary beads in hand, praying the rosary. You know what I mean? And I think to myself, I'm like, hey, man, if Drew Casper can pray a rosary in public, he obviously prays every day a rosary, you know what I mean? Because it wasn't the only time I saw him. I saw him do it numerous times, but this was a thing that he did. And he didn't do it every day, but this was a thing, in the courtyard. I'm sure he did it every day, but he didn't do it every day in the courtyard. But he was praying the rosary in public. And he wasn't doing it to be like showy. It was just time to pray the rosary, and that was a good place to walk, was in the courtyard and everything.
It's a meditative experience.
It's a meditative experience, and that's what he was doing it for. And I realized, hey, it's this tradition that brings me closer to my mother. And it's a meditative experience, just like Drew Casper was doing.
Yeah.
And so I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to keep this one practice.
Wow. Because
for my mom and because of Drew Casper, I'll hold on to this one practice. So, yeah. There's actually the story behind that one practice of why I hold on to it.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. We've been talking for so long.
Yeah, for sure. Of course.
I could talk to you for forever because you're just so interesting. But
thank you.
Curious. Do you believe in hell?
I believe that when we die, our brain might show us certain things. And let's say that happens for a few minutes. In those few minutes, because there's no existence afterwards, those few minutes are eternity. They will be. In those few minutes, few minutes are eternity.
That really just blew
100%
blew
because
my socks
the
off.
second you don't exist is you don't exist anymore. So those few minutes are eternity.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
That's like a worse way to think about hell.
Yeah. So if you feel so I think you have to prepare yourself for heaven or hell, because I think you will experience one or the other. Will it be forever? I don't know. But will it seem like it's about to be forever? Yeah. And then will it be nothing? And then nothing, and so it was forever. Yeah, it was forever.
So you believe that when you die, it's nothing. You don't believe in coming back or reincarnation.
Well, I believe your brain shows you something, and that's forever, because it is forever.
Right.
It is technically forever.
Yeah.
Forever is until never. You know what I mean? So forever
what's
is
after
until,
never?
So forever is until it just didn't even exist.
Yeah.
And so it will be forever. Right. Whatever you experience, whatever your mind shows you, after you die, will be forever.
Damn, you just
whatever
pulled that answer
that
out.
lucid dream state is after you die. Is it actual heaven or hell? Sure. You're experiencing it. You're there. Right. You're going to feel either that joy or fear.
Wow.
Based on what you feel you deserve. Based on whether or not you prepared yourself for something good or something bad.
Yeah. Just got to prepare ourselves for something good.
That's the way I feel about it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the message of religion. That's what they try to prepare people for, is they know, hey, man, after you die, the DMT trip starts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're going to be showing your idea of yourself, man.
Yeah.
And if you know that you cheated people throughout all of life and you feel you deserve hell, guess what, man? That DMT trip is going to be that.
Yeah.
But if you feel you helped out people and you feel people are coming to your rescue, that DMT trip is going to be that. Right.
Do you ever do things like shrooms? Have you ever done something like DMT?
I did a bunch of shrooms for a while, and then on a regular basis, like once every, I did like 15 times probably, with like no more than like 6 months apart. You know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah.
And sometimes like pretty close together, and I would do like whole eighths at a time.
Wow.
And then I once smoked DMT with Colin Tyrell. I lived with him. and
nice.
I smoked DMT with him one night, and that sent me into another world, man. And Countero was my babysitter, and thank God I had a babysitter. So that really made everything crazy. And ever since then, every time I use shrooms, it's way more intense now.
You unlocked something.
I don't know what I unlocked, but it's like way more intense.
Yeah.
And it takes me longer to come back. Like the effects of the shroom trip will last for like 3-4, not the immediate effects, but sort of like any anxiety or any sort
the
of
lingering.
It'll linger for longer than it used to in a lot of ways. And so because of that, I was like, you know what? I like myself. Like I should just kind of take a little bit of a breather.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I will say this though, if I have something I'm nervous for, which is rare, but if I have something I'm really, really, really nervous for, I tend to usually use shrooms right before it.
Wow. To like work through the anxiety.
I'm just not nervous at all afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad to have my mind back.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
That's what shrooms does for me. Is it just makes me experience schizophrenia, and then I come back and I'm like, oh, thank God I'm not schizophrenic. That's why I think a lot of people are like, oh, it changed my life. I'm like, you're just happy you're not schizophrenic.
Yeah,
again.
You just appreciate your brain.
Appreciate reality now that you're not experiencing schizophrenia anymore.
Oh my gosh! Wow, you've given me so much information to digest. Because I grew up Catholic myself, and so I definitely don't identify as Catholic anymore. But I don't know what I don't really have a religion, but I also still have this feeling of a connection to God, but like not really knowing what God is, and
well, that's where it gets really interesting. Is there's this guy named Joseph. This is all those things that I told you about with occultism.
Yeah.
There's this guy named Joseph Campbell who was a Catholic occultist. Okay, this is where it gets weird, right? And all of USC is like based on this guy's ideas. So there's all these layers. All these people entered in and wrote about the same stuff with different personas. This is what I mean, the million masks of God.
Right.
So there's one dude who's killing pigeons and having like sex magic, but then there's other dude named Joseph Campbell, who he wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces. Okay. And it's all about the same stuff as these other books, you know what I mean? Because it's all about the idea of if you throw religion out, but then you look at religions and you throw out the idea of if you take away words and you just look at ideas behind the words, well, then you notice that religions have a lot of commonalities, right? You know what I mean? All the religions have prayer, you know what I mean? All the religions have meditations, you know what I mean? A lot of religions have bearded, prayers with beard, beaded, not beard, beaded prayers. So what's that about? You know what I mean? You start to label all these commonalities. When you take away the words, you notice all the commonalities behind it, right? So he took that philosophy and he just said, what if you take away all the saviors of religion and just take their stories? So Jesus, Muhammad, you know what I mean? Joseph Smith, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Just take away Buddha, you know what I mean? All these people, take away their person and just look at their story. Well, you start to notice commonalities, okay? And because of that, he wrote this thing called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which he started this idea called the hero's journey. And so it's now this idea in philosophy it was created by Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey. And it's this storytelling idea. And believe it or not, every movie you've ever seen is this exact same story. In fact, it's Star Wars. Okay. Yeah. Star Wars is that. So it's this idea of it's a reluctant hero. The hero just wants to be left alone. And so the hero goes away to try to be left alone, you know what I mean? And then God or some outside force calls the hero back. Story of Moses. Moses goes into exile. You know what I mean? The burning bush happens and now Moses has to go back. So Jesus goes into the desert for 40 days. Then he has to come back. Buddha goes and sits under the tree until enlightenment happens. Then he comes back. So you go away and then you come back.
Yeah.
And so he figured that out, that when you take away the labels, you find all these commonalities. And this is an interesting thing. When I went away for that year, the thing that happened at first, and this actually also made me believe in that mindset, in order to start that year, that Catholic year away, this volunteer year, they make you do this thing. It's called the spiritual exercises. It's a Jesuit thing. It was created by St. Ignatius of Loyola. Now, the Jesuits do it for 40, do it once in their life for 40 days. It's meant to mimic what Christ did.
Right.
I did it for only 10 days. It's complete silence for 10 days. So I did that for 10 days.
Wow.
And what it is that was a weird experience for me.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason why is all your senses get super heightened
Yeah.
during those 10
It's
days.
like being on shrooms.
And it's like being on shrooms naturally. And so you kind of meet God in a weird way.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you realize you're like, oh, imagine if this was 40 days. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So what it is I was in this seminary doing it. And I was with all those other people who were volunteering. And we were all just locked away in the seminary for 10 days in silence, not allowed to talk to each other.
Can you talk to yourself?
In your head, you know what I mean?
In your
Like
head,
that, you
not
know?
out loud.
Not supposed to be out loud.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Anything like that. You know what I mean? But I would read the whole time. I read the whole time.
Right.
And I was never able to imagine what I was reading clearer. It was like a superpower.
Whoa, that's so cool.
It was wild just because everything else was shut off. All
Right.
the other inputs were shut off.
Right.
So that one input became,
Yeah.
it was literally, I was reading Tolkien books and I was like, I was there
Yeah.
in Middle Earth. It was so weird and
That's
so wild.
so cool.
And so,
if
yeah.
you could like bottle and sell that, you'd be a billionaire.
And so I'll tell you, it's and because of that, it made me addicted to solitude. That's one of the weird sort of
Yeah.
things that happened because of that. Because I'm like, oh, if I need to figure out what to do, I just need to go away. It's like it's like someone gave me that trick once.
Yeah.
The whole Jesus go away, Buddha go away, Moses go
Yeah.
away trick. And I realized that, oh, the longer you go away, the more God taps you on the shoulder and tells you what to do.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? And it
That's
makes
so
sense,
cool.
right? Because it's just your brain working shit out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like your brain just kind of funnels everything out because you went away.
Wow.
Yeah, solitude.
Solitude, man.
Yeah.
That
It makes me look at guys like when I first started doing comedy out at the Comedy Store. Hey, ready for this? The comedians that made it, like really powered through, are and who are healthy mindset wise, are the comedians that talk to nobody. They would sit there in the corner by themselves. Hey, you know who that is? Theo Von.
yeah.
Theo Von was. There are three guys that would sit in the corner by themselves and talk to fucking no one. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to name one name, and you might not like one name, but for better or for worse, I think these three guys are three of the healthiest dudes I've ever
Try
met in
me.
stand-up comedy. Theo Von is one, Dove Davidoff is another, and the third is Chris D'Elia.
Yeah.
Those three guys would sit in a corner and not talk to anyone. You couldn't beat those guys into a conversation. Those guys, I will tell you straight up, those three men love solitude.
Yeah.
And that's why you'll never finish those three guys. And Dove doesn't do as much as those other two, but those other two guys, you'll never beat them because that's why those two guys do podcasts alone.
Right.
Theo Von and Chris D'Elia do podcasts just by themselves.
Yeah, that makes
No one
sense.
else does that. No one
Yeah.
else can just rant for that long.
Yeah.
Those dudes would sit in a corner by themselves. Yeah, none of the other podcasters have solo. Tim Dillon
Tim
does.
Dillon. I was
Tim
literally
Dillon
going to
has,
say
so
Tim
he's
Dillon.
but I haven't seen him in
Yeah,
clubs.
yeah,
I haven't
yeah,
seen
yeah.
his environment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
The way I
he
saw
is
those
someone
guys.
that I feel like you can just tell by the way he lives his life. He has friends around him, but like, you know, he like
I guarantee you that guy experiences a lot of solitude.
I think a lot of solitude.
I guarantee you, because I will tell you this: Chris D'Elia and Theo Von were two guys that they would sit in the corner, man, and they weren't dicks about it.
Right.
They just, man, they were inside their own head.
Yeah.
They were waiting for their turn to go up, and then they would go home. D'Elia
Yeah.
never drank. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He would just show up. He'd hang out. You know what I mean? He'd sit there. You know, just sit there for a bit.
Yeah.
Kind of awkwardly. They would sit there awkwardly. and
I
then they'd
you know,
leave.
I never understood. I have a hard time like being in a conversation with you and then it's like, "Oh, Kelly, you're up." It's like I need like a few minutes to like stop down and get my head clear before I get on stage. Like
Yeah.
I need that time alone. And so I think I'm going to look more into solitude because I feel like sometimes I feel bad about my nature to be more secluded, but I always feel better. Like
Yeah.
I always feel more refreshed. Like I had a period of, and we are going to stop down soon because I have to get this edited
Yeah, of
because
course,
it's
yeah.
going up tonight at midnight. But I had a period of being unemployed for about 6 weeks
Okay.
back in just a few months ago. It was like end of September through October, and then I got a job in like the middle of November.
Yep.
And I spent so much time alone just walking my dog. And that's when I get all my best thoughts when I'm in the shower and when I'm walking.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
that's you know, because I'm just like I'm just alone. You know, I'm just with my own thoughts, unless of course I disrupt that piece with like music or a podcast. But I really try to not walk with AirPods in, because like I want to be able to just experience being alone and what's that like, and having the thoughts flow.
You know whose secret that is Andrew Castertano.
Oh,
So Andrew
so
Castertano,
funny.
I'm very fascinated with, because he's the only comedian I've ever met that's not derivative of any other comedian.
Yes.
Only comedian I've ever met in my entire life.
Yeah.
That is 100% not. I can't name the person that was before Andrew Castertano that does what he does. You know what I mean?
100%.
So 100% not derivative. So one day, I guess out of curiosity, I go, "Hey man, who do you like in comedy? Like, what do you listen to in comedy? Like, who do you like?" He goes, "Oh, I don't." He goes, I've never listened to comedy. I don't listen to comedy." And that actually makes sense. I'm like, "How do you come up with your jokes then?" He goes, "I smoke weed and I go on walks and they just come into my head." And I'm like, "Yeah, well, that's how it happens."
And he's
like,
so funny for it.
And that's
so
straight
funny.
from God. That's straight from God.
Yeah.
It's not derivative of anything. How do you explain that other than God?
Right.
It's literally God putting thoughts into his brain and then God going, "Hey man, go on stage and do this." And he goes, "Okay."
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he
that's
does it in such a funny way.
Yeah, yeah. And it's not derivative of anything because it's
Yeah.
straight from the universe.
Wow.
Straight from the other side. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's just what makes Andrew laugh, and that's it.
Yeah. Gosh. So pure. This was amazing.
Oh, thank you. This
Thank
has been
you
amazing.
so
Thank
much
you.
for coming on.
Thank you.
So great. With this conversation went to so many different places. Any final thoughts?
No, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let the people know where to find you.
So Didn't Die is premiering at Sundance. The big premiere is on January 28th. I will be in Park City for that. And I believe there's at least one chance to screen it online on the Sundance website, like during the festival. So there's like this one time at like 10 a.m. in the morning where you can watch it virtually.
Post about
after
it,
after it premieres on 28th, because it's shown in theaters like 5 or 6 times during the festival or something like that. And then it has one virtual screening online during the festival and everything like that. And then it to somebody who then distributes it on a streaming platform.
Amazing.
So yeah, we have a sales agent and everything. So it'll go to like Netflix and all that. So keep track of Didn't Die. Yeah. And then also Joe Camerota. Just look me up on social media. You see my face here. So if you type in Joe Camerota, you will find my socials.
Very cool. Anywhere where you can find Joe, I'll put in the description of the show. And until next week, we'll talk to you. Bye.
Bye.